Mhm.
Well, hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region, and welcome to this Free State Colorado interview. Today, I'm joined by Linda Bissett, one of the leaders of the Good Initiatives team. Well, Linda, I hope you are well, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we'll be diving into these good initiatives soon, but to start, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you got involved in politics?
Sure. I really wasn't involved in politics until the 2020 election, and I knew that there was something not right with that election. Um, and so I started diving into our election system and election integrity, have learned so much about how the system works. And my my ultimate goal is to bring Colorado back to a constitutional one-day election in person with voter ID to determine citizenship, hand-counted paper ballot elections with paper poll books. That's my ultimate goal for Colorado, is so that we can trust our elections again. But we got side railed this year in January when I discovered that Kent Theory was hitting Colorado and hitting the title board to get initiatives onto the ballot to bring us and this all candidate primary. And I had never heard of the title board. I knew that citizens could do initiatives in Colorado, but I'd always been so discouraged that it would take like $1 million an initiative, and you just can't do it. You have to have lawyers, and well, I don't know. People tell you all the time you have to have lawyers, and I've decided that that's not true. So, um, so we started attending the title board meetings in January to give public comment against his initiatives because they had so many subjects all piled into one. And at the title board, all their jurisdiction is whether it's a single subject or multiple subject for an initiative. And his were clearly multiple subject. I still believe they are. So we were fighting against that, and not on the merits of the initiative, just simply that he had a ranked choice voting, all candidate, petition access, ballot access. He had all these things piled into one. And he, by the way, had 74 different versions that went through the title board between December and April. He just slammed the title board. So he is going to end up with 7 of them that are titled, and he can choose then which ones he's going to petition in. We can talk about that. I have a good guess as to which ones he'll probably run with. But that's sort of how I started in on this. And I just had to learn. I just started reading and reading and reading the Secretary of State's website about initiatives, reading the statutes in our Constitution, everywhere that it talks about it, so that I could learn about how we do these things. And then, like I said, I was pushing back. I was filing for rehearings so that it would make him come back to the title board. I took one of them to the Supreme Court, Colorado Supreme Court, challenged it as multiple subject. I lost, which is pretty typical from what I can see. In the last 3 years, they've probably only reversed the title board 2 or 3 times. And then a gentleman named Mark Chilson hired Scott Gessler. And so they started in on the fight too, which was great. And so they still have 2 of Kent Theory's titles hung up in the Supreme Court. And that's why we're not exactly sure what he's going to petition, because I think one of the ones that's hung up there is, I think, what he really wants to run with. So anyway, that's sort of how I started into this whole title board initiative. Let's put it on the ballot. A friend of mine, Candace, down in El Paso, and I started doing this together.
Definitely elections are a big topic, especially since 2020. And yeah, I think a lot of people aren't really aware yet of these initiatives that Kent Theory's pushing.
Right.
I mean, for people who don't know, Kent Theory's got tons of money. I mean, he's willing to throw millions of dollars to change Colorado's election laws. He's done it in the past. He's always
Yep.
behind a lot of these initiatives we see every year. And yeah, he definitely wants to totally change how Colorado voters elect people to office. I know a lot of people are thinking that's for him, so he can get elected, without having to go through a political party because he's not really attached. He doesn't really have
Mm-hmm.
allies within either party. He wants to buy his way onto the ballot, and he can change election law to make that happen. Is what it is kind of the thing I keep hearing over these last few months. So it's going to be really interesting to see exactly what happens. And
Yep. I've
Linda,
heard the same thing.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because not only that, but Colorado voters are going to be facing possibly the longest ballot in state history. Dozens of initiatives are being proposed, but of
Yep.
course, not all of them are going to receive that sufficient number of signatures. So,
Right.
what's your plan, Linda, to get the requisite signatures and get it on the ballot and get this in front of the Colorado voters in November for what you're pushing, which we'll talk about here
Sure.
shortly.
Well, we decided to go on the offense by writing our own initiatives. Instead of just trying to fight him and trying to get everyone to vote no. It's like let's do our own. Let's actually protect the things that matter to us. And we went for amendments to the Constitution so that we could just be done with it, right? Let's just get it on there and stop this fight. So all of the opt-out issues for Republican Party, it was like let's just bypass the whole thing and put it on the Constitution. So let me let me do a real quick overview. So the three that we decided to do, and we did it in three because we were trying to do it the proper way, single subject, let the voters make a decision on each single subject. So the three subjects that we have, it's number 201, initiative 201, is to ban ranked choice voting in Colorado, or instant runoff is another name. Number 202 is to preserve the nomination of political parties through the caucus and assembly process, but it also allows for petitioning. So it's sort of a let's leave status quo right here. Okay. And then number 278 is to close the primary. Um, and and that would be basically rolling the clock back to 2016 before Kent Theory started in on Colorado. So only members of a political party may vote on their political primary. So those are the three that we've put out there. And I will just say when Kent Theory was at a couple of the title board meetings that I was attended, and his lawyers, is that Bernstein Brown something in Shrek. Many people know of them. I had never heard of them, but I'm up there going toe to toe with them, and it's kind of funny. I know I irritated them, and that's okay. Um, but his lawyers were asked at one time, well, what is this going to do to the political parties? Isn't that going to eliminate them? And they said, yes, that's our goal. They know they can't do it outright because political parties have right of association, so they can't just attack them that way. But if they take away the whole purpose for having a political party, which is to nominate candidates for the ballot, that's what they're trying to do. And so that's why this is such a dire call. And I'm not a big hair on fire type of a person. I want to have a real positive message for people because I do think that we can band together and we can fix it. But it is a hair on fire situation if you like your political party. I don't care which political party, but if you like them, you need to get in here and help us fight because his goal is to remove political parties from Colorado.
Well, yeah, and Colorado does have some of the best ballot access laws in the country, right? It's every presidential election, people sign up for the Colorado ballot because it's very easy to get on, and they can, frame that, put that, tell their grandkids they ran for president, even if they don't do anything except get their name on that printed ballot.
Right.
So that, that's kind of a little interesting tidbit there. But really, for just people who want to affect policy or to change things or to have a voice in the political system, Colorado is one of the better states for sure for third parties, minor parties, for really anybody out there to get on the ballot and have your fair chance at getting elected. You still got to go through the process, and it's very difficult to win that race, but nonetheless, Colorado kind of gives people that opportunity to at least get on the ballot, get in front of the voters. So
Right.
it's too bad that there's these people out there like Kent Theory who want to reverse that, who want to make it harder for people to get on the Colorado ballot, kind of an anti-democratic measure, if you will.
Right. But his talking points are just the opposite, to modernize the election and to make greater access to the ballot, which is wrong. I mean, if your only way to get onto the ballot as a candidate is to petition on, first of all, anybody with any disabilities who can't go door knock and get their own signatures, they're out in the cold. Um, Anybody like myself who doesn't have a lot of money, but I have solid beliefs and I could get, the Republican Party behind me to support me and nominate me onto the ballot if I went through the process, and um, it will remove that access for Candace likes to say it removes access for Joe the plumber, right? You don't have that option anymore. You have to have the money to get on. And if it really is without parties, now you can just see how anybody who dredge up the most dark money behind them to just media blitz them, that's who would win. Because um, imagine an all candidate primary ballot with me. So you'd get a ballot. There'd be possibly 10 people running for governor. Initially, they would still say Republican, Republican, Democrat, Democrat, Libertarian, Green Party, initially, but it wouldn't mean a whole lot if they didn't get nominated to those parties, if all they did was petition on. And I'm not trying to denigrate petitioning, but his idea of petitioning is different too. You don't have to be a member of the party to sign a petition for a candidate. So at least now, someone who's petitioned onto the ballot has had to find 1,000 other people in the same party who say, yeah, I think you'd be an okay candidate. But what Ken Theory wants us to do is you just got to get, 750 signatures. It doesn't matter who they are. So you could put an R or a D behind your name and feasibly not have a single Republican or Democrat, vote for you, have signed your petition. So basically it just means nothing, right? Initially, he will not be able to take the R and the D off, but it will mean nothing if you can't nominate candidates. And the parties will just become, a luncheon, a social gathering. If without any power, the whole purpose of a party is to nominate candidates and support candidates into office. And he's trying to strip that entire purpose away from us. So that's kind of a idea of what that all candidate primary would look like. Like I said, one of his initiatives is for petition on only access to the ballot. So no nominations. The one that I don't talk about very often, but I'd like to share here, because he has two of these titled, is the vacancy committee's appointments. So he wants to do away with that for our General Assembly members. And it's in general not a horrible idea. I mean, it's okay, so we get to vote, except for that, the committees appoint someone. So if a Republican is the one that dies and has to be replaced, they appoint another Republican. This would be similar to what we're seeing with the replacement for Ken Buck. It would open it up to all parties, brand new election, and it leaves the authority to call that election in the hands of the governor. And the way they've written it, it says at the next general election. Well, we only have general elections every 2 years. And so you could feasibly have a governor who tries to sway the balance of power in our General Assembly by not calling that election, by letting it drag out for months, if not over a year, up to 2 years till that next general election. Their response to that was, oh, we have a lot of faith in our elected officials. No one would do that. I'm sorry, I don't have that kind of faith in our elected officials. I could very feasibly see somebody doing that. I just could. Okay, seems logical to me. If you could sway the power of our General Assembly on how many people have holding seats, I totally could see somebody doing that. So that's one of the issues, and we do not have a direct initiative against that, except that they do call for that election to be a ranked choice election. And so should we get on the ballot and win those issues, anything that we win with a higher number of votes will nullify anything that he's gotten through. And his initiatives are all multiple subject. So we've pretty much taken everything out. But that one committee, the new special elections for vacancies, it would not be allowed to be conducted by ranked choice voting if we get our initiative to win, our amendment to win. But it would be really interesting. It's an interesting having conflicting measures on the ballot, and we will. It is going to be a battle between good and bad initiatives. That is, got my white hat on. It is the white hats against the black hat. That is what we're going for here. It's yeehaw, Old West, here we come.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah,
That's
I
cool,
don't know
Linda.
if I gave you the proper answer to your question, but sorry. There's so many details involved in all of this over the last few months.
Well, that was definitely one of my questions. What if your initiative's on the ballot and Theory's initiative's on the ballot and they both win? what
All
happens at
right.
that point? I think you already answered that, but can you just say that
Sure.
one more time?
Yeah, I will. I'd like to actually, I'll show you my hand here a little bit. When you read the Colorado Secretary of State's website, it says that there can't be two conflicting initiatives on the titled onto the ballot. So with reading that initially, before I read the statute that actually gives you the language, I thought it's a race to get titled. If we could get titled before him, we'd push him out. That the way their website reads, that's what it makes it sound like. So we were like, yeah, all right, we can move faster than a huge team of lawyers. Let's get titled. We'll do it single subject, no problem. And we went through, no problem. So we have our three that are titled. But of course, the more I learned, yes, you can, they will both, we can both petition on. They could be these very obviously conflicting issues. Um, Feasibly, well, ours are amendments to the Constitution. He's got a couple that would be amendments to the Constitution, but most of his are going to be statutory changes. So we have to have a 55% win threshold anyway. So we win with ours. I think we pretty much just win with the most votes. But that's what the law says is if you have a conflicting issue, whoever's initiative or wins with more votes, that takes precedent and it will eliminate any conflicting issues within those two initiatives. So if we have the right to nominate and we have no ranked choice voting and we have, close the primary so that the major parties have the right to have a primary ballot that only members of their party can vote on, then we've kind of taken his feet out from underneath him.
Oh, very interesting. Well, Linda, what have you heard about, like from the Democrats, for example? Because like last year in the state legislature, there was a bill to eliminate the caucus system in Colorado, and the Democrats, have a strong majority, and they killed that bill. I mean, they killed that bill in its first committee hearing. They didn't like that. So, are you hearing anything from the Colorado Democratic Party or any of these Democratic leaders out there who maybe would be an ally to you in this cause to fight back against these bad initiatives?
I think I have not heard from them directly. No, I have heard from some unaffiliated who have signed, and we can talk about that. Um, but I'll just say it: anybody who likes their party will not like what he has in plan for us. I mean, and there are many Democrats, most who like their party. They like to be a part of the Democratic National Committee or party, right? Same with libertarians. Libertarians have signed on with us right away. They gave us a donation. They're like, we're with you. We want to help. We want to help circulate too. They get it because ranked choice voting just, I'm sorry, it just sucks. That just is the case. And then having these open primaries has hurt the Libertarian Party too. A lot of the unaffiliateds would probably could sign on as libertarians, but they're like, I get to be in this whatever land, not have to make a choice and do whatever I want. And it does hurt the parties. So they're all for closing the primary again too. Our middle initiative doesn't mean anything to them as far as nominations because it is for major political parties and it doesn't affect them. But they are being libertarians. They're like, but let's get it on the ballot, let the people vote. So they're all for they're supportive of that also, and good for them. I have not heard from the Democrats. I have heard others say that the Democratic Party has even come out against ranked choice voting. So I would think that they would be our ally too. Like I said, if you like your political party, you need to come support us. And um, I happen to be a conservative, right? But I've never been big into the GOP. Like I said, my issue has been focused on election security and election integrity. Um, I've been a registered Republican my whole life, but that doesn't mean I'm part of the GOP. I'm not a precinct leader. I know many people who are, but that's just not been my gig. And anyway, I do. I think that this would benefit all parties, and because without it, even the unaffiliated get this. As I've had a few people signing, and I've had a few say, but I don't want to be. I don't want to affiliate. I'm like, yeah, but look what's going to happen because if we have no parties, which is their goal, everybody everybody, unaffiliated included, relies on the D or the R or the L, or with you rely on that as your base. This is who this candidate is. They're a Democrat, they're a Republican, they're a Libertarian. It's your first culling of the herd, right? Can you imagine a ballot that has 10 names with, and you don't know anything about those candidates? You know nothing because there's no more party affiliation. I mean, we already have such incredibly low information voters. The amount of work it would do to research all of those candidates for all of those offices, it would literally come down to people buying their office. Who can have the best media blitz? That's who would win every office. I can't see how it would play out any other way. Maybe I'm being short-sighted, but that's how it looks like it would happen to me. So
Well, just to play devil's advocate for a second, Linda, I mean, what if this means that, say there's no political parties, that voters actually have to do their own research, they have to get online, they have to, if they want to vote, because there's a lot of times people will undervote, right? If there's a candidate and they don't know either candidate or they don't like either candidate, they just won't vote. But maybe this would force people to do that research, to kind of dig in, to be a little bit more informed, and then make that decision based on values or ideas that are important to them rather than that party affiliation. I mean, what do you think about that?
there is an idealist in me that wants that. Okay, there is. But I'm also a realist. And what will happen is exactly what I just said. Whoever has the biggest amount of money behind him is going to win because they will blitz the media, and that's who will win. It won't be the best candidate. And so idealistically, oh yeah, I kind of like the idea. It's like, what does this person stand for? Oh, that lines up with me. I get that. I get that idealistic, but I don't I don't see I don't see a way to make that happen.
I tend to agree with you. Politics, it often comes down to money. Whoever has that best name ID, that best exposure, that media coverage, a lot of that
Mhm.
seems to make a difference. But, the ballot access, the ability for people to go through the caucus and assembly process really gives just individuals, we often call them the grassroots, but just people who are just average, everyday people who don't
Yeah,
have millions of dollars behind their name to get in front of voters, to get on the ballot and get out in front of people. So I think that's one of the most important keys here is that, Camp Theory's initiatives, the bad initiatives, could potentially mean that there's less just average citizens serving in government, like you said, the Joe the Plumber kind of
yeah,
idea, compared to, hey, now everybody's got to buy their way on. We're gonna quote unquote modernize these elections to make it so, you have to have this expansive social media and big media coverage and all of this. But
yeah.
uh, interesting stuff. I did put together some slides, and
Let's look at it.
one of the things I focus on with Free State Colorado is providing information a little deeper than that 60-second soundbite on the nightly news. So yeah, let's dive in, take a deeper look at these initiatives. I'm gonna go ahead and share the screen here.
Sure. And it is kind of confusing. As I'm having people, sign, I will say it's hard. It's a hard subject matter to understand how ranked choice voting works is not easy. So to try and to describe it is not easy, which just goes to show it's not something that the average person is going to grasp hold of and really understand what they're voting for. And then he throws in an extra curve because so instant runoff is kind of what they were using the term more than ranked choice voting. But um, one of his initiatives, he even said, well, it's kind of our version of instant runoff. So, I mean, there are purists who really like ranked choice voting and instant runoff and, bottom up, and they can name them. The League of Women Voters, there's a couple women that were down there fighting against Kent Theories with me who are on the complete left. They just don't like how he's doing it. They want ranked choice voting. They just don't like how he's doing it. So his lawyer said, yeah, the closest thing we could come to what we were trying to create was instant runoff. So that's what we called it. So even those who really like it and know what it's all about, what he's offering them is not the same thing. It's its own version, um, which is, even in my opinion, even more deceptive to the public. So say you like ranked choice voting, say you like instant runoff. Well, guess what? You think that's what you're voting on, but that's not what he's bringing to you. You know, the wording and the way he has his statutory changes, it's not your average instant runoff election. So
Oh,
little
interesting. No, that's
tricky.
very good to know. Yeah, very tricky, very good to know. It's the old political trick. You name something, that sounds good or that people are familiar with, and then the reality is a little bit different, right?
Yep. Yep. Definitely. So yeah,
Perfect.
so the
Well,
good initiatives.
yeah. Yeah, so the good initiatives. Let's take a look here. All this information can be found at coloradocounts.com. So if you're interested out there, that's where you sign up to volunteer, to donate, to contribute to this cause. Definitely, they need people to get involved, to show up. In Free State Colorado, we talk so much about getting involved in local politics, and this is a really great way for you to get involved this year and have a voice and have some input on what everybody in Colorado is going to be voting for. So let's dive in here and see.
Let's do.
All right. So first slide here. This is from your website. Like I said,
Yep.
coloradocounts.com is where you're going to find all this information. But you already went through these a little bit, but these are the good initiatives. So those numbers, that's what they're called in this phase of the process, but they will have a different number,
Yes.
just so people are clear. They will have a different number when they're actually
Yes,
on
they
the
will.
November ballot. So just to clarify that for people out there. But yeah, 201, prohibiting ranked choice voting in Colorado. We'll dive a little bit into that. 202, preserving the nominations for ballot access through the caucus and assembly, but also keeping that petition process. So, like you said,
Mhm.
kind of preserving that status quo that we have right now.
Yes.
Uh, and then 278, closing the primaries. So having partisan primary ballots chosen by the polarity of voters. So only people in that party could vote. So kind of a reversal of what Colorado voters changed several years ago, which is creating these
Yes.
open primaries that we have now currently, which, in the next couple of weeks, everybody's going to be getting everybody unaffiliated and Democrat and Republicans going to be getting their primary ballots across the state.
That's
So
right.
uh,
That's right. Yeah. And for the Republicans out there where we've been fighting for to opt out of the open primary, um, that's sort of been our fight this last year. This is going to take care of that. This we get this passed, and no longer do we have to continue to do that because it'll be a constitutional right for major political parties to have their own primary ballot where only members of their party can vote. So that's and the
yeah, it makes
language in yeah, the language in 278 is straight out of the statute, by the way, except we added the word only because they took the statute where it said major political parties have the right to have their own primary ballot and members of their parties vote on it. And then because the word only wasn't in there, when they opened the primary, they just added the next sentence that said, and the county clerks will send out both ballots to unaffiliated voters. So I was like, wait a second. So anyway, so we added the word only there.
Yeah, it seems to make sense. If you're part of an organization or part of a political group, shouldn't only members of that political group decide who represents that political group to the voters? I mean, that it just seems like common sense to me. But so I'm always surprised that it is still a divisive issue, even within the Republican Party. I
It
know
is.
the majority of Republicans support closing the primaries, but it still seems like there's a big faction. And I don't know if I want to call them the moderate Republicans or maybe some of the more less conservative Republicans, might way to put it, are kind of in favor of open primaries, it seems, as a way to maybe bring
Yeah.
in unaffiliateds to the party, kind of try to see it as a way to reach out or, to those unaffiliated voters. And then it seems to be like the more conservative types of Republicans are against it. Is that fair to say?
I think that's very fair to say. And I've had that conversation with a number of people as I'm trying to present these. I will say I feel like my vote is being disenfranchised by having open primaries because I want to know that the Republican candidate that was nominated by Republicans. That here's this whole group of Republicans, and we all said, yes, that's the guy that gets our nomination. I don't want unaffiliated. I don't want Democrats to come in and vote on our primary because it's not a true election. And I want to know that my Republican vote was counted with a whole bunch of other Republican votes and it wasn't disenfranchised by being watered down with those who really don't share the same values. So they're picking a different type of a candidate. And so that's my conservative side. I will say in this scenario, we're trying to close the primary to stop what he has because I do believe that that Democrats and unaffiliateds do understand that by him opening the primary completely up and eliminating the parties, that isn't really what they want. Even if they like the open primary, that they don't want to get rid of the parties altogether. We all rely on those designations, on the party designations of the candidates. Unaffiliateds rely on it just as much as the party members. That this is a Democrat, this is a Republican, and they look at. I mean, what they do now is they say, okay, which races do I want to affect, and they choose which ballot they're going to vote on, right? And typically, the Democrats don't put up as many primary candidates. That's what we've seen recently, right? So then we have a whole bunch of people voting in the Republican primary that don't necessarily have the same values as us, but it's their option now. I think that we're going to find. I mean, it was only 8 years ago, for goodness sakes. It's only two major election cycles ago, where we didn't have this. I mean, I got gray hair. I'm old enough to remember voting in the precincts too. So I just feel it's such an easy thing to do. 30 seconds to get on the Secretary of State's website and change your affiliation. So people, that's what they used to do anyway. Change your affiliation to vote in the primary that you want to vote in. It's not a huge ask. And to save our political parties, I think it's worth it. But
Perfect.
that's my spiel on that one.
Perfect. Well, let's take a look at some of the bad here. So here's your black hat, your the bandit who rode into town with his money bags here, kind of coming in to
That's
change
right.
Colorado's elections here. So you already talked a little bit about these, but just I'll read them off for people. Ranked choice voting or instant runoff elections,
Mm-hmm.
petition only access to primary ballots, so no nominations through assembly, all candidate, all party, all voters, quote unquote jungle primary. This version creates an unaffiliated primary ballot as well. Special vacancy elections, months of no representation, and timely reporting of election results so that start counting 2 weeks early and report as you count. So very
Great
interesting.
ideas.
Yeah, definitely would would fundamentally change how Colorado votes.
Yes, it
I got
would.
to say though, the idea of doing something about the special vacancy elections or this vacancy committees, it seems like there's something that needs to be done there because we've seen some of the most extreme left Democratic Socialist of America candidates get elected, or not elected, but selected through these
Yeah.
appointments, through these vacancy committees, like Tim Hernandez, Lorena Garcia. I mean, some of these people are just absolutely off the wall that normal voters, probably wouldn't have put them into office. And now that they're in there, they're running as incumbents with name ID, with recognition, with a bigger donor base because they've had those contacts with the lobbyists and all these other groups out there, and have been able to establish that. So they kind of got a shortcut, a cheat. They cheated almost a cheated way to get into the system, and now I'll get all the benefits of being of what an elected representative would normally get, right? So,
Right.
you know, months of no representation, I got to say, might not be the worst thing in the world if it saves us from somebody like a Tim Hernandez or some of these Democratic
Yeah.
Socialist people, right?
I will say when I first read it, I was like, oh, that's not such a bad idea. Oh, that's not such a bad idea. I think it is a logistical nightmare for our clerks. The timing to put together an election is months. They kept saying they kept sort of throwing over the hypothetical scenario. So if someone like died in October, they could get on that November's ballot. And I'm like, no, they have to certify those ballots way over there in September for Uwakaba people. So you'd be another month or so out. And so the cost, we haven't even discussed cost on this, but the cost on all of it is just outrageous. I mean, and so the cost of having to do these special elections would be crazy. I'm with you. I do think I liked the idea at first. My first glance was, oh, that's not such a bad idea. It would be conducted the way he's got it written. It would be conducted by ranked choice voting. It would open it all the way up again. It wouldn't just be a Republican having a little Republican election to replace the Republican that was originally, voted in, or Democrat. Otherwise, it would open it all the way up again. So now your numbers in the House that you had could feasibly be changed again. I once again, I can see both sides. If it was written any other way, I'd say, yeah, let's try it. But the way he's got it written, it's kind of ugly.
Yeah, well, let's keep looking here at some of what we have to talk about with ranked choice voting, because I think, like you said, one of the biggest things with ranked choice voting, one of the biggest strikes against it is how complicated it is, right? I mean, little kids can understand one person, one vote. They get their little ballot, they can write something down in grade school or raise their hands to vote for something, and it's so simple, so fair, so easy to understand. But ranked choice voting, I think, yeah, it's just so complicated. So let's take a look at it and give people an idea of
Certainly.
what this would mean if ranked choice voting became kind of the primary method of electing people here in Colorado.
Sure. I'm going to put a little caveat in there. The last two slides you had were sort of just screenshots from our website. And I just want to say, if you go to our website, you can click on any of those and it'll bring you to the language in our initiatives. But I've also done the links to Ken Theories on all of his bad initiatives, if you want to go read the language that they're trying to change too. So just to say that those are all live links, each one of those. So you can go and read the actual language. And I know you have some slides in the future that will show that in this presentation. So, but people can go read if they really want to learn and see what's happening. Go on up there. I've put all the links up there for you to easily click through and read what's happening.
Awesome. Yeah, coloradocounts.com, coloradocounts.com. Definitely a lot of good information on there. Very easy to navigate, and definitely check that out to dig a little deeper into some of these initiatives, especially some of the bad ones that we're not necessarily going to get too far into tonight.
Mhm.
So looking at ranked choice voting, this is just from Ballotopedia, a good nonpartisan website kind of giving people information. I'll just briefly read this here. So how ranked choice voting works. Broadly speaking, the ranked choice voting process unfolds as follows for single winner elections. One, voters rank for candidates for a given office by preference on their ballots. Two, if a candidate wins an outright majority of first preference votes, so over 50% plus one, he or she will be declared the winner. Three, if on the other hand, no candidates win an outright majority of first preference votes, the candidate with the fewest first preference votes is eliminated.
Mhm.
Number four, all first preference votes for the failed candidate are eliminated, and second preference choices on these ballots are then counted as first preference. Five, a new tally is conducted to determine whether any candidate has won an outright majority of the ballots. Number six, the process is repeated until a candidate wins the majority of votes cast.
Right. So they're redistributing votes from those eliminated candidates. Usually about 10% of the ballots end up being exhausted and just thrown away. Um, and they're creating a false majority. I mean, if you like the first line there, if the second line, if you get a 50% a true majority first round, great. You got a true majority first round. But if you don't, then they just force it. So never does the most popular, the one that has the highest number in that first round. I have yet to see a scenario where that person is the one that won. Usually it's the second and or third person in the first round that ends up racking up all the second and third choices. So there it's like the candidates that everyone was like, they'd be okay. Just the and then you've got 45% who really wanted this one person who are just completely dissatisfied, which is why places that do ranked choice voting like Alaska um hate it. Their participation plummets, and they Alaska, who is the poster child of ranked choice voting, they have it on their ballot to repeal it this year because they hate it. So they've had this all candidate primary, and they've had the ranked choice voting, and it has been a disaster for them.
Oh,
I think it was
interesting.
Mississippi was the ninth state in the union that just banned ranked choice voting by a legislature. So I'm hoping that Colorado is the 10th, that we can just say no, we're just not going to have that here.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know. There was the Libertarian Party convention, the national convention this weekend in Washington D.C., and they use ranked choice voting. So, you know, uh, they went through somebody won, a candidate won the first 5 rounds, but didn't have the 50%. So as people got eliminated out, and then ended up losing. So they were the clear preference for 5 ballots, basically. It's a little bit modified version where they had different ballots. So
Right.
5 different ballots. uh, won all of those. And then once those other people were eliminated, then it ended up, somebody who was maybe the third or fourth choice down ended up taking it because, so it was kind of interesting to see it play out over this last weekend
Right.
here, Memorial Day weekend in
And
Washington,
that was
D.C.
and that was a runoff election where you got to vote in between. You got to change your mind and now, okay, now who's in the playing field? In an instant runoff, you don't get that. You have to do your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right away and then just let it start rolling through. Um, I will add another huge issue onto this. Um, and that is that the the covered offices that they are going to do ranked choice voting for are federal and state, but at least in their initiative 310, which is I think what he wants to go with, it's what's stuck in the Supreme Court. It doesn't cover the county offices. So we would all get an all candidate ballot, and then we would still get our party ballot for the county. So you've just added hundreds of thousands of dollars in printing and mailing costs to each county. The licensing fee for ranked choice voting is at least 50,000 per county. So we've added a couple $100,000 to the county's cost. And now let's talk about the fact that when you're going to do a state election or a CD, a congressional district, you can't just add up the votes from each county and say this is who won the statewide. You have to have that whole pool of data to run your algorithm, your ranked choice voting algorithm to do all those counts, which means we'd have to do what Maine does. And what Maine does is they do their election in the counties, and then they have a courier service. We're a much larger state than Maine, and they take a flash drive by courier to a state central count location. So we would have to set up state central count locations, district like congressional district count locations. So now you have the expense of having to have all of these plus the security of it. You talk about you talk to anybody in computer security and you know that there is no way to do that securely. There is no way to say that this USB drive that I just pulled from Arapahoe County or from Durango out of San Miguel County and drove it 8 hours over the mountains to the Secretary of State's office, and plugged it into their computer. Talk about a security nightmare. So the security aspect, there's a lot of people that don't get into that. They just trust and okay, we trust it. Oh, well, okay, let's not even go there. It's not this discussion. But the cost of it is insane to think that we're going to have to set up state central count areas, district count areas on top of our counties. So the cost of this is crazy. I know that I just saw a statistic from the Alaska ranked choice voting, and they said that their costs from when before and after ranked choice voting it was up 328%. That it's cost so much more. Plus, there's a lot of money that goes into education because no one knows what to do, right? We're so used to just marking one person. Whoever gets the highest number of votes or a plurality, that's who wins. They are the most popular candidate of the handful that was put in front of you. And that's how we've done our elections for 250 years in America. And I mean, ranked choice voting has been around for a while, and it has years, and it has been used in smaller elections to try and do it on this large scale. We had one version where they wanted to do it for the presidential election too, and he did withdraw that eventually. But the ones that he's got going now are going to affect federal and state offices. And we'll see. He has one version, like I said, that version there would create an unaffiliated ballot. So it would have like all of them. And I'm not sure if that covers county. Anyway, there's some more geeky information for you that most people aren't going to hear. But it is going to be very hard to implement, and it's going to be very expensive to implement.
Yeah, yeah, very complicated. Let's take a look at that election in Alaska because I know that was probably
Yeah.
the most famous example of ranked choice voting. So here's round one and round two. So there's a special election in Alaska a few years ago here, and so round one everybody voted for their first choice candidate. So three people there, the Mary, Sarah Palin, and Nick there, and nobody got 50%. So then it went on to round two. So round two, the Nick guy was eliminated because he got the fewest votes, and then people who
Mhm.
voted for Nick had their votes transferred for their next choice. So they picked their choices, they ranked who they wanted to win. So everybody the majority of people who wanted Nick to win also would prefer Mary over Sarah. So Mary then reached that threshold of votes there because she got over 50%, where
Yep.
Sarah Palin did not. So very interesting to see that play out into somebody who's the former vice presidential candidate, former governor. I mean, Sarah Palin lose that election there for U.S. Congress.
That was a weird one. I've looked at that before, and if I remember correctly, Nick was also a Republican. So I thought that was weird. So this must have been one of the that's sort of all candidate primary. Well, it wasn't a primary though. This was a special election. So I just thought it was sloppy of the Republicans to put up two candidates against a Democrat. That's to me, that's bad. That's just a bad decision. You're going to have a struggle there, right? But there's also an election up there. I think the I feel like the woman's name was Chewbacca, who had like 46% out the gate, and then by the time they did the ranked choice voting, she ended up losing. It is how Murkowski won, is through ranked choice voting. And there's a quote from Donald Trump had gone up to Alaska in 2022, and he starts going off on how Lisa Murkowski got elected by this ranked choice crap voting, and it's crazy. She couldn't have won by herself. And anyway, so there's our president.
Yeah, interesting to see how this played out. Just to give people an idea, this special election, this is a real election that resulted in somebody being elected to Congress. But
Yep.
moving to your slide about your initiative here. So this is on your Colorado Counts website.
Yep.
People can find it there with the link. So this is the initiative language, section one. So if this is what people are going to see on their ballot, or this what people will see on their ballot, I suppose, or maybe at
No,
the back of the blue book, or see that information at least.
correct.
Yeah, kind
This
of
is
giving that detail.
this is the language that would go into the Constitution. So this is the Declaration, and it's sort of what I'm told. This is what, if there were ever a challenge or a lawsuit around this, they would come to this to understand what the writers of the initiative, what their intent was. So we made it as plain as day. We're trying to conserve our elections, right? So that's what this declaration is. And then the next section is the language that would be inserted into the Constitution. The title is what will be on the ballot, and that's their questions. Shall, whatever. That should be on that link too. And now that you say that, I'm not sure if you've captured in this, but I will say the language that they use, the title board uses, um, I I will give them props. They hold a really good meeting. They think hard, fast on their feet. Um, they definitely have their own leanings politically, but the language, that the words that they use to create titles are so unflattering. And the language that they used, especially on ours to close the primary, they just made it as unattractive as they possibly could. And I called them out on it. I'm like, could you make it sound any uglier? Could you at least have one line that says to prohibit, unaffiliated, and another line says, we're, encouraging some sort of a positive spin to this? But no, they had this kind of, like I said, they made it as negative as they possibly could. It's okay. It's what they do.
I'll
So
just, I'll just,
this is
I'll just, yeah, go ahead.
this is our declaration. This is what we want everybody to know, and this is why we've written the language. And then we wrote the language to try and stand up legally. So
Gotcha. So this is the why behind the initiative. I'll just read it briefly here. So this is your declaration of where you're putting this on the ballot. One, it is in the interest of the people of the state of Colorado to protect proven effectiveness and time-honored tradition of the conduct of elections in Colorado. It is further in the interest of the people of the state of Colorado that the method of conducting elections in determining winners instill confidence in voters that election outcomes be determined fairly. As complex methods can undermine public confidence in elections, such methods must be simple, transparent, and comprehensible to voters. In furtherance of this objective, the people of the state of Colorado establish that all voters have the right to be free from any manipulation or complication of voting methods, including voting method, ranked choice voting, instant runoff voting, or any variance of the name given to this method. So pretty clear. I like that this establishes that intent. So if there's questions later, because often we see that, especially like say for for example, the Taxpayers Bill of Rights. There's people challenging it in court continuously. People, well, what was the intent behind it? What was the idea behind it? This is really what provides that background to it. So I did copy section 2 here as well. So this is what people will actually be voting on. So section 2 in the Constitution of the state of Colorado adds section 13 to article 7 as follows. Section 13, ranked choice voting prohibited. 1, ranked choice voting is prohibited from use in any election process for any public office in the state of Colorado. 2A, public office means any office in town, city, county, district, state, or federal government whose occupant or occupants are determined by election by the electors of the respective political jurisdiction. B, ranked choice voting means a method of casting, recording, and tabulating votes to determine which candidates are elected, in which electors are permitted to rank candidates for an office in order of preference, and ballots cast are tabulated in multiple rounds following the elimination of at least one candidate until a single candidate is declared elected. 3, in determining whether a method of casting, recording, and tabulating votes constitutes ranked choice voting as defined herein, the name given to the method is not to be considered. 4, any statute, ordinance, rule, or operating procedure in conflict with this provision is void. Section 3, effective date. The initiative takes effect at 12:01 a.m. on January 1st, 2025. So, yeah, that's it. That's what people will be voting on, stopping this ranked choice voting. And as we can see, it's this complicated method in which, it totally changes how people are going to elect people to office. It kind of makes it a little bit more difficult, I'd say.
Yes, it does. It is, there are so many votes that end up getting exhausted or thrown away. And the statistics on it show that it actually disenfranchises or affects sort of the more vulnerable groups, the elderly who don't quite understand what's going on already, the minority groups who don't quite understand the instructions as well if they don't speak English as their first language. I'm just saying that these are the statistics that we're finding, is that those are the people who are the most frustrated with it.
Yeah, interesting. That definitely makes sense. It's something complicated. I could see a lot of people just not voting at all because they might not know what to do.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's what we'll see out there right now, getting those signatures, trying to get those petitions signed to get it on the ballot there. How much more time do you have to get those signatures, Linda?
We have until July 31st to collect them all because we have to hand them in by August 5th. So that means we have three of them, three ballot initiatives. So 3 petitions to get round them back up and get them organized to bring down to the Secretary of State's office by the 5th. So our goal is to get 200,000 signatures across Colorado. Because we're doing constitutional amendments, we have to get at least 2% of that out of all 35 Senate districts. So our goal is to get 3% out of every county, which will cover everything. And you can pretty much count on about a 30% throwaway rate, which is ridiculously high, which is why we're going for 200,000 signatures. I will say at the moment, we need the most help in the Denver metro district. It seems that the more rural counties have grabbed a hold of this idea really quickly and are ready to go out there and get their signatures. But I will say, I need people in the Denver metro area to step up. There's about 10 different Senate districts just in the Denver metro area alone. And that's where we need the bulk of our signatures to come out of. And I would like to see more people volunteering. Let's just say it that way. Because I
Yeah,
do think
definitely.
it's a doable thing. I do. It is a doable ask. It's a big ask, but it's doable. And we have 2 months to get it done, and then you can go on with your life again.
Well, perfect. Let's take a look at the other initiatives here that you're working on. So the caucus and assembly process, So most people probably know how to get on the Colorado ballot here. There's two ways really. Get enough petitions, signatures of voters, to get on the
Huh?
ballot. And then assembly. So this is the more grassroots kind of style, the way where, maybe you're a known person in the community. Maybe you don't have a lot of money to pay or can take the time off work to go get those petitions, but you can show up at a county caucus, your local caucus and county assembly meetings and get elected that way and then sent to the ballot for the whole state.
Right. Yep.
So that's currently what we got. So your initiative here, 202, would preserve those nominations for ballot access through caucus and assembly, but also by petition. So
Yes.
briefly, the declaration behind this one is it is in the interest of the state of Colorado to preserve proven, effective, and time-honored traditions in the conduct of elections in our state. In order to protect equal access in local, state, and federal elections, it is necessary to guarantee voters and candidates an alternate pathway to the primary ballot other than the petition on method described in statute. It is also in the interest of the people of the state of Colorado to protect the caucus and assembly pathway, which is open to any candidate, despite financial limitations or personal physical aptitude. It is further in the interest of the people of the state of Colorado to protect candidates from a mandated petition on method, which imposes an undue financial burden on candidates unable to bear the expense of a vast signature gathering operation. The petition on process also creates a physical barrier to non-ambulatory or similarly physically impaired persons who are unable to conduct door-to-door signature gathering efforts. In furtherance of this objective, the people of the state of Colorado establish that all voters and candidates have the right to participate in the partisan caucus and assembly process to gain access to the ballot. So, can you give people an idea how much it costs to get on the governor's ballot, for example, or if something along those lines, just to kind of show the difference between somebody who goes to the county assembly, state assembly, gets elected, maybe doesn't have to spend a ton of money to do it versus somebody who just wants to petition their way onto the governor's ballot, for example. Any idea, Linda, kind of what that cost difference would be?
Sure. This isn't my area of expertise, but I do remember looking this up for the Secretary of State office. I believe Pam Anderson spent about $200,000 getting her petition signatures. It's about $15 a signature to get a signature these days. I as soon as we got our titles, I had a petitioning company contact me and basically quote me $1 million per. It would cost us $3 million to get the signatures on these. So it's quite pricey.
Wow. Yeah, it makes sense for somebody like Kent Theory or somebody with a lot of money who maybe wants to limit ballot access to people just
Mhm.
like him, to people who can pay for it. But
Yep.
fortunately, we do have this caucus and assembly process where somebody who doesn't have extreme amount of wealth behind them, they're probably more representative of the people in that area anyway, and so they should
Right.
have a fair chance to get on the ballot and get out there and represent the community. That's what they're supposed to be doing.
Right. Now I will say that, county offices obviously don't have take as many signatures. School board obviously takes even less. State house, like state general assembly. I mean, it all depends on the area that you're the district of population in the district that would be voting for your office. So Secretary of State is a statewide office, so that's a big number. But it's still, I don't have $10,000 to pump into trying to gather signatures for even a county office or a school board race. It just instantly takes you off the out of the running.
Definitely, yeah. So, your initiative here is going to preserve that ability for just average people to have an opportunity to serve in government, really, I
Right?
think is what it
Yeah.
really comes down to. So, Section 2, here's what people will be voting on this initiative 202. Uh, Section 13 here. Uh, so, Section 2, in this Constitution of the State of Colorado, adds Section 13 to Article 7 as follows. Section 13, right to partisan caucus and assembly. One, in addition to the petition process, it is the right of Colorado citizens to gain access to the ballot as a candidate to any local, state, and federal office through the endorsement of a political party, which includes A, participation in the partisan caucus and assembly process, which offers candidates the opportunity to advance to the primary and general elections through the benefit of their party's endorsement earned by competitive selection. And B, having met the eligibility requirements for the relevant public office, candidates then submit to the rigors of competitive selection based on consideration of personal merit and conformity to party platform. The caucus and assembly process is conducted without favoritism toward financial or physical endowments. And C, candidates winning nomination for their race for public office constitutes singular endorsement of the political party and grants them access to the primary and general ballot. 2, any statute, ordinance, rule, or operating procedure in conflict with this provision is void. Section 3 effective date. The initiative takes effect 12:01 a.m. on January 1st, 2025. So this seems definitely, I think that's a really winning language, is preserving the rights of Coloradans, preserving the rights of people to get
Yep.
on the ballot, and allowing them the opportunity to do so without having to have millions of dollars in the bank. I think that's kind of a key point there that people need to be aware of.
Right. And I'll give you a little technical thing. The language within this initiative is the next amendment for the Constitution is, Section 2, add Section 13 to Article 7. Basically, if we get all three of them, they'll stack the numbers. It'll be Section 13, Section 14, Section 50. But when you're writing these, technically, that's what they ask you to do, is you just say what the next section is in our Constitution right now. And depending on how many amendments were to win, they will distribute the proper number to them.
Gotcha. Yeah, it definitely makes sense there. Interesting technical detail.
Yeah,
So
it is interesting.
So people, coloradocounts.com, again, that's your resource for all this information. If you want to contribute, if you want to help protect the right of citizens in Colorado to get on the ballot through going caucus and assembly process, then this is where you want to go, coloradocounts.com. Looking at the last one here, the closed primary initiative. So Initiative 278, closed primaries, partisan primary ballots chosen by plurality of voters, and I have such trouble saying that word. Section 1, Declaration of the People of Colorado. It is in the interest of the state of Colorado to preserve proven, effective, and time-honored traditions in the conduct of elections in our state. All nominations by major political parties for candidates for United States Senator, Representative in Congress, all elective state, district, and county officers, members of the General Assembly, shall be made by primary elections. Major political parties are entitled to nominate candidates in a primary election to be voted on in the succeeding general election. So it seems pretty straightforward there. Let's see the actual language people that would actually go into the Colorado Constitution. So in the Constitution of the state of Colorado, add Section 13 to Article 7 as follows. Section 13, political parties to elect nominees for the general election by separate primary ballot. 1. Each major political party that is entitled to participate in a primary election must have a separate party ballot for use only by electors affiliated with that political party. Candidates voted on for offices at primary elections who receive a plurality of the votes cast shall be their respective party nominees for the respective offices in the succeeding general election. Any statute, ordinance, rule, or operating procedure in conflict with this provision is void. 2. Major political party means any political party that at last preceding gubernatorial election was represented on the official ballot either by political party candidates or by individual nominees, and whose candidate at the last preceding gubernatorial election received at least 10% of the total gubernatorial votes cast.
That language is straight out of Colorado statute, except we added the word only. So to have a separate ballot for use only by electors affiliated with that political party. That it's just straight out of our statute, and we added the word only to close it.
So really, this only is really the only change to state statute is just saying
that is
um,
yes, we're trying to enshrine that into the Constitution, but closing it by adding the word only. In
interesting.
statute, the following sentence is something. I should probably put that up there so people can see it. The link to that statute, because I don't even remember where it is at the moment. But the next sentence after that is they just added on, and county clerks shall send both Democrat, both major party ballots to unaffiliated voters. That's when they open it up in 2016. That's how they did it. They just added a line. So we obviously have left that line out. And we added the word only. We did throw in here, because the language in statute says that the candidates voted on for offices at the primary elections who receive a plurality of the votes cast shall be the respective party nominees. So if you want to say that, I mean, we argued like crazy that by them doing a primary and specifying that it's ranked choice voting, that it was too subject. There was some discussion, we had some discussion, well, are we doing a multiple subject here by doing this? And my argument and the answer is no, because it is what we are currently doing. We aren't changing our method of how we conduct elections in Colorado. It is a plurality of votes. I will say this is the only place in statute where the word plurality is used. Everywhere else it says the highest number of votes, and it says it like in back to back. It says the plurality of votes and the highest number of votes in the same sentence. And some of Kent Theory's language, if you go and click on his and read them, because the title board was giving them a little bit of a hassle using the word majority because it's a buzzword and they didn't want that, they changed their language to the highest number of votes. And I find it to be very confusing because ranked choice voting, the key figure in that feature in that is reaching that majority of votes. That's the trigger that ends the election or ends the tabulating, is forcing someone to get a majority. And so I have some issues with the way the title board kind of scooted them into a corner, and then they ended up using that language, which I think is deceptive. I find it deceptive. It doesn't mean the same thing. The highest number of votes is what we've done for 250 years. And the majority, this false majority for instant runoff, it has meaning. And so I was arguing, I wanted them to use the word majority in their titles. Like, no, I want it. I want everybody to see the difference. And they wouldn't do it. They said it was a buzzword. So they wouldn't
Oh,
use
interesting.
majority in theirs.
Very
So
interesting. Yeah. So it seems, just to kind of point it out here, the three initiatives that you're working to get on the ballot, two are really to protect the status quo in Colorado currently. This third one is a little bit different in terms of it's kind of rolling back that clock, kind of doing a reset to what it was 8 years ago, as you said, in
mhm.
actually changing current Colorado statutes. So just interesting there to see, I guess, this has been such a big issue, especially in Republican Party politics. If you're already getting in it, signatures and already working on the initiatives for the other two, why not add this one on and go for the whole kit and caboodle here at the same time, right?
Right. Well, especially, I mean, we wrote these, we crafted these in contrast to what he was doing. I mean, if I was going to go put an initiative on to the ballot, I would have gone for hand counted paper ballots. That's what I would have gone for. Okay. I had considered it, and people had said, no, you need $1 million. You have to have a lawyer. And I was like, no, actually, we don't. We can just do this. Let's just do this. We're just going to do it. So we did it. And we did consult a lawyer, who just talked with us about it. We didn't hire them. But in my estimation, we've saved at least $100,000 by doing this ourselves, by doing these true citizen initiatives. I mean, we're just people trying to help here. And so we were citizens, we were down there fighting. And we wrote these. I think we did a pretty darn good job. Um, and and now we're trying to get other citizens to stand up together with us and to fight against the machine, because that's what we're doing here. And we don't have a lot of backing. And I'll put a plea out there. Please, 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 please give us some money to donate to pay for the printing of the petitions. To print and to distribute them across the state has cost us $20,000, which we've paid out of our personal pockets. And we don't really have that money to throw, not to mention all the hours that we've personally put into this ourselves. But if you guys could help us bear the cost of that printing, that would be so appreciated. Just anybody. And you can donate right there on our website. Our address is there. If you want to mail a check instead, that'd be fine too. If there's any, I don't know, county party chairs that are listening to us, I think it would be completely an appropriate thing for the county chairman, the county parties to pitch in $500. I mean, if we lose, they aren't going to have a county party to be a chairman of. So it really, that is the bottom line, is we're trying to save the parties here, period. And we're just asking for everybody to pitch in. And it wouldn't take a whole lot for us to all just do it at one time.
Yeah.
I just how we get that organized, I'm not sure yet, but that is it, I mean, I can see it in my head. I can feel the energy of it all happening, right? How do we get it to happen? This is one of the ways we're asking everybody to really consider the consequences of not standing up now and what that would look like. And let's just take a couple months here and make it happen. By the end of July, we'll have our signatures, we'll be on the ballot, and we can make it happen. And so part of what we're doing is also the education piece here, right? Because we aren't going to have the millions for the media blitz, and he's going to do a media blitz with his. So part of this is that word of mouth education as we're going around and we're petitioning and we're speaking with people about it, is to understand what's coming at us in November. It is going to be on the ballot. You know, he is going to get on the ballot. He has the money to make that happen. I'm sure he's got it all lined up already.
Let's
So
take it.
so
Well, that's a great segue here to take a look at. This is from your website from coloradocounts.com.
yeah,
Great resource. What Kent Theory's Colorado election modernization means to you. The bait and switch of election reform, what you're really getting. So, overturned 250 years of U.S. election law, 150 years of Colorado law. We've never seen this before. The continuation of 2016's Propositions 107 and 108, the open and presidential primaries, ending the party system, the party platform and party nomination, ending the marketplace of ideas. The top four candidates from each primary race advance to the general, possibly all one party. I haven't heard that before. Can you talk a little bit about how that works?
sure. I guess I didn't say that, did I? Okay, so we're gonna have that open primary, and the top four candidates are the ones that will move on to the general. So right now, right, we have a Democratic primary and we have a Republican primary, and then the minor parties get to just nominate their people at will, right, at that point. So that's who makes up our general ballot in November. But what this would be is an open primary, so this all candidate ballot, and it would just be the top four winners out of that ranked choicing. Those would be the ones that would move forward. So you could feasibly have them all from one party. You know, it's like I mean, if we even consider the parties, right? I mean, just like you could have, maybe we should say all with the same ideology, essentially, so that's who would move on to the general, not necessarily. Well, it wouldn't be. It wouldn't just be a Democratic candidate that's been selected through the primary, a Republican candidate that's been selected at the primary, you know, and then, like I said, the minor parties, that's where they nominate onto the ballot their people. Sometimes they have their own primaries. I think the Libertarian Party will sometimes have, they're big enough now that they will sometimes have a bit of a primary system before they nominate directly onto the general. But that's the different system that we would have, is so you wouldn't have those party nominations to assure a position on the general ballot. It would be just the top four that come out of that all candidate primary. And
Oh, very
if
interesting.
you have four Democrats running and they're the ones that take the top four spots, you know, with this weird rigged ranked choice voting system, then that's all you'd get to choose from to vote for on the general.
Huh. It seems like it could be a really risky proposition. I could see some people, in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, what if you did this? What if you ran these candidates and you tried to, game the system a little bit by having, you have your one pro-liberty candidate and then you have some others and maybe they could sneak in. I don't know. It seems like there's a lot of opportunity for sneakiness and kind of manipulation and people playing games with our elections, even more so than they do now. So it's
I know.
definitely would be a very interesting thing at the very least.
Yeah, and that's one of the things they're trying to say. Oh, they're trying to prevent spoiler candidates. And I'm like, no, you're just giving a different opportunity to cheat. It's kind of like people that say they don't want the electoral system anymore. They want to go for a popular vote. It's like it doesn't matter. You run your campaign very differently if you're going to go for the popular vote or the electoral vote. That you play the game differently. And so the same thing with this. There are ways for a spoiler candidate to get on the ballot, right? There are, but there would be with the ranked choice voting system also. It doesn't, there's always a way to play the game differently. And so I don't buy that as a reason to switch to ranked choice voting at all.
Yeah. Continuing with the list here, all voters may sign all petitions for any candidate. All voters vote in primary races. It ushers in a pay-to-play system where only wealthy or those that they control will participate. Joe the plumber need not apply. Some are constitutional changes requiring amendment to repeal them. So if they turn out to be a mistake, then you'd have to amend the Constitution again. Creating a uniparty, hive mind candidates with less diverse opinion, and designed to silence the fringe points of view, pro-life, pro-gun, pro-border, America First voices.
Yeah.
So can you
Yeah,
briefly describe like how that would work in terms of silencing, say, a pro-gun candidate for office?
well, you're by the time you melt down this the rank choice and you've redistributed all these sort of second and third place votes. Um, well, think about it, a real strong personality, a really strong candidate. Um, they have 46% of the vote who is maybe all pro-gun or something, right? And then you have a couple other candidates that are a little bit just sort of centrist. They aren't quite as strong on some issues. They're just sort of they're the ones that middle of the road, kind of what where our politics is really playing to these days. It is. That's why we have 47% unaffiliated. Is we've bought into the idea that we're going to try and play to that middle of the road. Um, and and so that's I think what we're trying to point out here is it's that second and third more middle of the road that ends up banning a couple different people's votes together to come with the fake majority because they really can't hold the election on their own. They only got 25 or 30% on their own. But by the time you've added in other people's second choices, then it builds them up and makes them look like they had a false majority of support where they didn't. I mean, where you've got the person over here who was strong in their beliefs, who had 46%, of just straight out votes, but you have these other people that had to just sort of band together a couple people. I mean, we see it all the time. We see it like with um, when you're voting in for a GOP chair, they literally talk and they say, okay, I'm gonna throw my supporters at you to try and block this other person, right? I mean, that's how these runoff elections work. I mean, I think it probably happened out there trying to vote for the replacement for Ken Buck too. That's just how these runoff elections work. Is you ban a couple people that can't quite pull the election off, and you pull their supporters together to get a big enough support. You hear what I'm saying? I think I've probably said too many words around that now.
No, definitely appreciate it. It's such a, it is, it's such a complicated issue. There's so much to be said about it. I mean, there's so much to dig in, and so I really recommend people check out coloradocounts.com, to dig in deeper. We spent a good amount of time on it this evening, and I hope it was useful for people. I hope people can take this information away. And, there's so many, basically anybody in Colorado who's involved in elections whatsoever, whether you're a campaign consultant, whether you're a political activist, whether you're a candidate for office. I mean, this is something you need to pay attention to. This is something you really need to get involved in. And I mean, especially if people who are maybe career politicians or have some sort of ambition, this is something to really pay attention to because it could change entirely how you could get elected here in Colorado. So,
So
really
true.
appreciate you, Linda, all the hard work you've done, and
Thank
really encourage people to go to coloradocounts.com, donate, contribute, sign up to volunteer. This is one of the important things that maybe is flying under the radar for a lot of people so far, but definitely needs to be talked about. Needs to be getting out there because yeah, what Ken Theory is trying to do is totally just totally going to upend our political system here in Colorado. And Linda, I think you have a really good opportunity too to build a coalition, between people on the left, the right, and in between,
Yeah,
because everybody has that kind of everybody has a reason to get involved and to come together on this non-part. It truly is a nonpartisan issue to
it
come
is.
and get involved and push back on what this really rich man is trying to do to our politics here.
It's true. It is nonpartisan, but I'll also just put this plug in there for the Republican Party, who, let's be honest, we're pretty fractured right now. We are. I see this as a unifying issue because, in general, we have so much more in common as Republicans than we have that separate us and divide us. And I see this as a unifying and a healing action to work on together within the Republican Party. But I welcome our libertarian friends and I welcome Democrats who also enjoy and want their party system too, because that's we're all going to be affected by this.
Awesome. Well said. Any parting words here, Linda, before we before we end it for tonight?
No, I don't want to be too much of a Debbie Downer, so I just want to encourage everybody to come join us. I think this is a doable call to action. I think we can do this. And so I'm asking everybody to join us, and I will just put another little plug in there for donations. You can see there's a page right there. We're taking donations through Give, Send, Go, or else you can send us a check directly. And we just would appreciate that, so we can at least recoup our the money that we've had to lay out of our personal wallets. So and more than anything, we're happy to have found something we can do to fight for our state, because our elections they're under attack, and instead of just sitting there, we found a way to fight back. So let's all do it together.
Awesome. Well, very well said. And if I know some people who are already carrying petitions, whether it's for some other issue they care about. And, this is a good opportunity. If you're already out there getting signatures, reach out to the Good Initiatives team, and maybe they need somebody out there in that area of the state to get
Right.
petitions for this as well. So, there's no reason why you can't have, 3, 4 petitions with you, 6 petitions with you even,
I'll,
and
I'll
try and get
tell
them all at
you,
once.
on my petition board, I have 5, and I have sticky notes on the side to bring you to the next signature page. So I have R3, and they also have the Protect Kids Colorado ones. Those are the 5 that I'm carrying. And honestly, people are relieved. They're like, "Oh, good, I get to do this all over one time."
Yeah.
So it's kind of nice. I mean, it's a lot of writing for them all at one time, but then they're done, and they appreciate that opportunity. So,
Awesome. Well, thank you, Linda. Really appreciate your time tonight. I hope this is
all
some
right,
useful information. But yeah, keep me up to date. I'd love to stay informed and see what I can do to help. So appreciate you.
great. Thank you very much. I appreciate
All
it. Enjoyed the conversation.
all right. Take care, Linda.
Okay. Bye.